When I say the word mafia, what pops into your head? Let's be honest, you're probably thinking about The Godfather, right? A secret global empire, a boss of all bosses. And hey, for over 100 years, that's what Hollywood's been selling us. But what if I told you the best answer to the question, what is the mafia, wasn't written last year or even last decade, but way back in 1901? Seriously. Today we're going to dig into the work of a sociologist named Gaetano Mosca, and trust me, his answer is timeless and, well, pretty shocking.
All right, so let's just rip the Band-Aid off right away. On one side, you've got the myth we all know and love. Think The Godfather, one giant, all-powerful crime syndicate. But then you look at what Gaetano Mosca was actually saying over a century ago, and it's totally different. He says, look, the mafia isn't one thing. It's two. First, it's a way of feeling, like a cultural vibe. And second, and this is the real kicker, it's not just a crime problem, it's a political problem. And that, well, that changes everything, doesn't it?
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with those two faces of the mafia, then really get into the spirit behind the gangs. After that, we'll unpack that all-important political connection and wrap things up with a warning from Mosca that feels, well, eerily relevant.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of Mosca's whole argument. He basically said, back in his day, when people in Sicily used the word mafia, they were actually talking about two totally separate things. And here's the key. You can't even begin to understand the gangs, the criminals, until you first get a handle on the cultural mindset they grew out of.
And you know, Mosca himself says it perfectly. He's like, listen, we have to look at these two things separately. You've got the spirit on one hand and the gangs on the other. And that simple act of separating them, that's what cracks the whole code. See, one is just a feeling, a mindset. The other is the actual organization. And spoiler alert, the feeling always comes first.
So what on earth is this spirit of the mafia? Well, think of it like a code, a whole worldview, really. It's this deep-seated belief that for certain types of wrongs, calling the cops isn't just pointless, it's a sign of weakness. In this world, real honor means you handle your own business. You use your own strength. And yeah, if it comes down to it, you get your own revenge. It all comes from this profound, deep-rooted mistrust of official justice.
And that spirit, that's the soil. That's the fertile ground where the other side of the mafia starts to grow. The actual criminal gangs, which in Sicily they called koszkie. These are the guys we picture when we think of the mafia. But, and this is so important, Mosca's whole point is that these gangs can only exist, can only thrive, where that spirit of the mafia is already part of the culture.
All right, let's go a little deeper into this whole mindset, because it's not just some fuzzy, vague idea. Oh no, it has its own very specific rule book. It's a code, where staying silent isn't just about not getting whacked, it's about honor.
And this is what I find so fascinating, how specific it is. This isn't just, all laws are bad. Not at all. The mafia spirit has its own legal system, its own jurisdiction. So get this, if someone scams you or, say, picks your pocket, a crime based on cleverness, it's actually fine to call the cops. But if it's a personal offense, an attack on you or your family's honor, the code is crystal clear. You handle that yourself. It's all about proving that you are not a person to be trifled with.
And right here, this is the real source of omerta. You know that famous code of silence? See, it's not just a rule for made men in a gang. Mosca argues it comes directly from this wider cultural spirit. Why? Because reporting a personal offense is seen as dishonorable. You're bringing strangers, the state, into what's supposed to be a private affair between you and the person who wronged you. It's a cultural rule first, and only then does it become a criminal one.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got a culture that values private justice and silence. So the big question is, how does that create the perfect breeding ground for organized crime? Let's connect those dots.
And Mosca has this amazing metaphor for it. He calls it a true culture soup. I love that. Just picture it. In this soup, where most regular people won't go to the law for help, a small, tight-knit, organized group can suddenly use intimidation to get whatever they want. See, the gangs aren't some alien species that landed from another planet. They're a perfectly natural growth that springs right out of this unique cultural environment. So how does this actually play out on the ground? Well, Mosca gives us the classic playbook. Imagine you're a new landowner. A local man of respect comes by, offers you his friendship, his services. You politely say, no thanks, I'm good. And then, funny things start to happen. Your vines get cut, some tools go missing, just little inconveniences. And who shows up again? Your friendly man of respect. He offers to investigate, and what do you know? The problems magically disappear. All it costs you is a little tip.
It's a protection racket, pure and simple, but it's dressed up as neighborly help.
And this right here, this is maybe the single biggest myth buster in his entire work. After laying all this out, Mosca drops a bomb. He basically says, you might have noticed I haven't mentioned some big, overarching organization that ties all these gangs together. And then he says, I didn't mention it because it doesn't exist. Boom. No godfather, no boss of all bosses, no central committee. The Mafia, as he saw it, was simply a collection of separate, local gangs.
But wait a second. How do these little local gangs get so powerful? They can't do it on their own. And this is where Mosca's analysis gets really, really sharp. He says the true source of the Mafia's power isn't guns or muscle. It's its cozy relationship with politicians, what he brilliantly called the Mafia in yellow gloves.
It's basically an unspoken deal, a corrupt partnership. Look at what each side gets. The politicians, they give the gangs protection from the cops, legal impunity, and all sorts of favors. And what do the gangs give back? The one thing every politician craves: votes. They can deliver entire neighborhoods, entire towns, through influence or just plain fear. It becomes this toxic, vicious cycle where the criminals and the politicians can't survive without each other.
And here's the crazy part, the real irony of it all. Mosca argued that something we see as a good thing, expanding the right to vote, actually made the whole situation worse. Why? Because all of a sudden, that block of votes a local gang could deliver became incredibly valuable. It became a political weapon. And any ambitious politician trying to get elected quickly realized you pretty much had to make a deal with these guys to win.
So, to prove this wasn't just some theory, Mosca points to a massive, real-life scandal that was shaking Italy to its core back then. It's the murder of a man named Emanuele Notarbartolo. And this case is the perfect storm where you see the spirit, the gangs, and the politics all crash together. So here's the quick and dirty version. In the late 1800s, there's this huge banking scandal ready to explode, not just in Sicily, but all across Italy. You have this one honest bank director, Notarbartolo, who's about to blow the whistle on the whole thing. And in 1893, he's assassinated. Now, finding a hitman in that Sicilian mafia environment, that was the easy part. The real story, the national outrage, was the cover-up. For more than 10 years, the investigation went nowhere. Why? Because a whole network of powerful national politicians, guys who were also tied up in the scandal, were protecting the murderers.
And this was Mosca's mic drop moment. His conclusion was absolutely damning. He said, look, the murder may have happened in Sicily, but the impunity, the fact that they got away with it, that was a national disease. The failure to get justice wasn't just about some local thugs, it was a symptom of a deep, systemic rot that had infected the entire political body of Italy.
And that leads us to Mosca's final, chilling warning. He said the real danger isn't a bunch of criminals trying to influence the government from the outside, no. The real nightmare scenario is when that line between the criminal world and the political world just disappears. When the mafia is no longer outside of power, it is power. When its corrupt methods stop being the exception and just become business as usual.
So we've come full circle. More than 100 years ago, Gaetano Mosca told us the mafia wasn't what we thought it was. It's a mindset. It's a political machine. And his ultimate warning was about that terrifying moment when crime and power fuse together. And that just leaves us with one last question, doesn't it? In our own world today, where the lines between politics, big money, and illegal behavior can sometimes get awfully blurry, just how loud does that century-old warning still echo? It's definitely something to think about.